Yeah.
Turn things on. Where's the wood? Right here. There you go. Can't tell if this was wood or not.
Okay, so we are live. Hold on, I just gotta make sure that. Sorry. Okay. I think we're good.
All right, good afternoon. We'll call this meeting to order at 5:03 p.m. this afternoon. This governance committee has been tasked by the board to come up with a process for naming the new elementary school that is being built. And so that's what brings us here this afternoon. Dr. Fadley has submitted some documents to us this afternoon. And Dr. Fadley, I'm going to defer to you to give us the information at hand and then perhaps gain some direction from that.
Certainly. As you know, I provided a kind of a summary in the weekly board update regarding the recommendations from the administration, as well as the naming, renaming school facilities supplementary policy that was never adopted by our school board, but included in your packet this evening is that supplementary policy for your consideration. And then in my conversation with President Renner, he had asked me to put together a process or an anticipated process just to begin the conversation with the governance committee. So what I did is I looked at several districts, but kind of landed on the West Fargo School District because I thought their naming policy was pretty robust, and have put that into a document for you to review. It has been modified a little bit to take out of some of the information that was included in there that wasn't pertinent to this particular conversation.
Dr. Fadley, in your exploration, what method or methods were most effective for constituents to submit their ideas for names?
So I think it's important. This is such a significant milestone for any community that, regardless of where you are in North Dakota or any other state for that matter, that I think that we need to make the process meet the needs of the community. And where we've had a lot of success is the electronic surveying of our constituents, because there is not a intensive time investment. Try to keep that very short, but also giving them the opportunity to provide that voice and that input that a community staff, the community, the people in Williston have to bring information forward to the board so the board can have a robust conversation in an open public meeting on how we got to where we are.
Any questions from anybody here at the table?
I don't have any questions, but I do have some suggestions.
Yeah, no questions here. I guess as a board member, how I see this process and the priorities. I guess I see the role of a board member in this process is maybe to serve as a tiebreaker. I think it's important to solicit feedback, particularly from the community of students, in addition to at-large community members and staff as well. This isn't just a school district or a school thing, this is a Williston thing. And then the survey approach, I think, rather than just sending a name or naming suggestions, I would also like to see, not a requirement, but maybe a recommendation of maybe 2 to 3 bullet points of why. And kind of see who is doing their research and which names are coming off of the top of people's minds or are coming from a research-based historical reference. You know, that's kind of the thought process I've seen. As far as I like this, I like something where it's staff driven and it covers all the bases. But those are my priorities.
Before we maybe get too far down the road, because Dr. Faley has submitted this policy that has not been adopted by the board. This document, Dr. Faley,
Yeah, this is just a supplementary document
Okay.
from the North Dakota School Boards Association, and it was never approved by the board or adopted by the board. And I will add that it's very basic.
okay,
So the other one is the process, which
okay.
really outlines in detail
Is
some of the direction the board can go.
Is this a century code sort of thing
It's
that's
not required.
not required? Okay,
I see the necessity it serves.
pardon me, Joe.
I understand the need for policy. I
Right.
mean, just something my phone.
I just was able to glance over these two paragraphs, which seemed the most pertinent to what we're after this afternoon. Is that correct, Dr. Haley?
That is correct.
Can you give us a brief synopsis or just a summary of what's recommended?
So it really talks to the point of, once we know it's a financial reality, which we already know that the community has approved us building a school. It requests that we involve staff, students, and the patrons of the community. They would submit proposed names through whatever process the board decides, whether it's electronic or, if they can actually write on a piece of paper, we can enter it, or they don't have access to technology. It would also include what within the narrative here would also invite board members to be a part of submitting those suggestions as well, because, in my opinion, the board's elected to represent the community, and they should also have, they may have some strong opinions as individual board members about, the history of this community and what their constituents might want them to portray. And so the board would also have that option. And then the final selection would be made by a vote of the school board.
Okay.
So this is really a board function. I would also add that, we're getting to the point in time where we want to, try to expedite this process, because now we're starting to talk about color palettes, and we're talk about mascots and what the colors are and how we mesh those colors inside the school building, whatever they may end up being, with the actual final project. And we're going out and we're starting to talk about bid package 3, as we did earlier this morning, and that's where all the detail comes in.
I guess my recommendation would be, Joe, I like your suggestion. I wonder if people would also have the ability to submit a paper to the district office here, perhaps with their name suggestion, because maybe they don't use electronic media. So I'm thinking we need to figure out what process we want to use.
Yeah.
If we want to bring this recommendation to the board, and what sort of a timeline, like a begin date and an end date for submitting those suggestions. Any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, can I?
Absolutely.
Awesome, great. I think this is a very good idea. I did see in here that, the names will get narrowed down to, a select number 3, and then that will be what is submitted to the board to in turn make the final decision upon. I think that's all a very good idea. I do like this. One thing that we did in the past, when we named the Bakken, we allowed the students to do that naming. That process went well, but it had a lot of hiccups to it, because the students submitted what they wanted it to be, and then the school board made the final decision on which name it would be. That was an existing building, and I thought that process was fine. However, this is a brand spanking new building, just as the high school was, and I would like to see more ownership. So I do want to see students having an opportunity to offer input in the form of a vote, or maybe even a classroom vote where the teachers can work with their said students and select one name as a suggestion from that classroom, or maybe allow the individual buildings to come up with a suggested name to submit. So that way it's building wide, but then also having submissions from the patrons as well. And then there would potentially need to be a secondary committee or this committee to look at all those name suggestions to whittle it down to what's gonna go forward to the board. We can't present to the board 100+ name ideas. That would just be impossible. So we'd have to come up with a process to whittle it down. This lays it out a little bit. So making sure that we have all those steps in place so that we're not going, guess what? The 7 of us have to look at 100 names and figure it out.
So,
And I think Dr. Finley did say, I'm sorry, Dr. Finley, that students, staff, faculty, and constituents will all have
Yes.
that opportunity.
if I may, Mr. Wallstead, maybe provide some additional
Sure.
context on how we might get to whittling those names down. So what I have here is each school board member will choose up to 3 names from the list submitted. So what we could do is do the electronic survey,
Right.
and we could maybe provide the board with a set of data that shows the top name getters and all the way down. And the board would then submit 3 names, each submit 3 names. So there would be a total of 21 possible names that would come to the regular scheduled board meeting. Names could be taken off the list during that discussion in support of a majority of the board. All names that remain after the discussion phase will be placed on a ranking ballot that each member will complete prior to the next regularly scheduled board meeting. The ranked list will be discussed and a formal vote will be taken at that meeting. The name with the majority vote would then be the one selected.
Yeah.
In the case of ties, board members will vote for the highest ranked names until a majority supports the proposed names. And I would say names and school colors, so we can do it at one time.
And since another school has already worked through this process, I don't see any need to reinvent the wheel. So.
Agreed.
So I do have a couple concerns. My own, I as a board member, when we dive into these types of things, I'm very conscious of our position of influence. If I'm able to make a name suggestion and then also affect that final list, I'm probably gonna suggest the one I want. Which, as a board member, I feel more comfortable just being treated as an individual that can also submit a name. And then evaluating that process. I mean, you can do a lot with surveys. We get cluster results and you can see which themes are coming up. Doesn't have to be the same name, but it's the same type of thing. And we can take it from there. I want to put any more work on staff, but I would love for staff to come up with a recommendation. And if there's a tiebreaker, the board can serve as a tiebreaker. But this is completely community driven, staff driven. And I did kind of dive into the segment survey as well. Like if we're going to talk about districting the district, maybe we start surveying in particular the residents that are going to be attending this school. I don't know if that's fair yet. I don't know if we want to do it in the individual buildings. I know where you're coming from there, but then we have the possibility of buildings competing against each other and maybe a negative outlook.
True, good point.
I would like us to come as a team to this and as a board. I mean, I don't want to tip my hat on, I named an elementary school. No,
So
staff named it, we approved it. That's.
So if I hear what you're saying correctly,
Like
the
this.
board would be just one of the constituents and staff. We would do kids, staff, and the community, and then we would give the data, whatever the data shows, to the board, and then the board can narrow down the tops.
I think the data drives the staff. Maybe like subcommittee is created, maybe there's a board member on that, maybe not. I personally don't feel like the board, unless it comes to a tiebreaker or a point of concern with a red flag or somewhere, which you guys are just as much capable of identifying as we are. We speak for the constituents, right? But in this part, we're asking the constituents to speak for themselves.
Okay, so maybe a hierarchy of what, the top 10 names were, top 10.
I would like to see the results.
So all the data would go, but the top 10 would,
This is the
be pulled
recommendation
out.
based on.
and then that's Are you saying the one that gets the most is the one that's recommended for board consideration, or the board can discuss the top ones?
I guess I would say, based on the survey and how the survey is built, that shows not only the names that were submitted, but is narrowed down based on a cluster of themes. And then narrowed down based on your cabinet, your group of individuals in that committee. I don't feel that this has to have as much board involvement in the nuts and bolts of it, more than just the approval process.
I appreciate that, Joe. In my opinion, I just think, in my opinion, some of that responsibility is relegated to us as the board and kind of put on us. And it might be possible that you or I might submit a name that we really love, but then when we hear other suggestions, like, oh, yeah, I like that one. So I appreciate you wanting to remove bias out of the decision. I really appreciate that.
I just want to be treated like a community member in this aspect. I don't feel like this is representative of my constituents, especially to my constituents as that representing the out of district in the out of town position. It's go fill the survey out. And maybe in the survey, it's where maybe there's where you live, or some context. What is your representation? Is it a community member? Is it out of town, former community, current staff? That can all be filtered through the survey process.
I'm kind of curious, Dr. Fadley, is there a way to limit, obviously there's a way to limit who has a name suggestion to keep it within district membership, you know what I'm saying? Within the school district, so somebody out of state, out of town isn't gonna be voting on a name, so.
Yeah, I was gonna certainly send it out, I guess, to our parent platform. The only concern that I would share, and I think this is a legitimate one, what about people who don't live here but actually pay taxes here?
And that's
not
legit.
having a voice.
That's legit.
Yeah.
Or they attended school here and they still live.
Right,
Williston,
right.
Yeah, I mean, that's legitimate, so.
And I think, yeah, it's name suggestion, your name, your representative group, and we have a subcategory of I'm a community member.
Yep.
I'm a parent, I'm a student. I pay taxes in Williston. They can have a fill in the category here again.
We can delineate on who's submitting the survey. That's an easy thing to do.
And the community involvement, I think, so we decided we're gonna do here, we publish it. And I'm on board with everything here, and I think it's a little bit overstepping with the board's involvement here personally. I want my vote in this case to be treated as a community vote. I feel like I don't feel like my vote as a board member should matter more in this instance.
Maybe Joe, maybe can we bring this recommendation, I mean, as it's submitted to us, can we bring this to the next regular scheduled board meeting, and then if they want to give input, maybe they agree with you, maybe.
Yeah.
We at least, we gotta have a starting point.
Oh, absolutely. And that's, I guess, my what I was getting at is approving this. But the only thing identifying is the board part. I like the structure, and this is the board.
So,
But I guess.
so if I hear what Joe's saying is, he would be supportive of everything except each school board member will choose up to 3 names from the list of submitted names. So, because then you would be a part of, just like everyone else, taking the survey. Is that what you're really getting
And
at?
I will take this survey and submit my name, and if it's not chosen based off of the process that will be identified. And I think if we choose this, we publish this, we also be transparent in that narrowing down process and how the survey functions. And then I guess how I see it is regular board meeting, here's our recommendation for the new elementary school. Based on these process, we're looking for board approval. With all the data, because the board's involvement is still there as the community members, and then the approving body. Our job is to support staff, support the processes in place here, and there are certain situations where our decisions are weighted heavier because of our rules. And this is one I think is community, it is like, my own should have, that's not the person.
So I'm gonna jump in here, respectfully, I disagree.
Please do it.
Yeah, love it.
So as school board members, we're elected by the public to represent the public. And it does fall on the school board to decide whether or not a building is going to be built and then proposing that to the community and then allowing the community to vote yes or no. So it is I feel that it is our responsibility to in turn name that school.
Mhm.
I've been in the process of naming 3 schools in this community. By no means was mine the only words. The community put forward what they wanted and then we made the final selection. So, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, that you want to be separate, but it is the board that makes the final decision on what the name's going to be. That's just how it is, that's century code. But, the one problem that I see potentially is if the board is removed from this in the fact of selecting 3 names each, a subcommittee is going to have to do that instead, and then that's removing yet the board again from making that final selection from what the public recommends. So I think that following this step, I truly believe represents what we stand for as a board. We are soliciting the feedback from the public of, in all ages, all aspects of the public, of what name would you like to be, and then we're narrowing it down each to 3, and then in turn we're narrowing it down yet again to a final decision vote. So that way the public's having full input, and we're having our input as the board in that final stamp of the name. So, and patrons know how to get a hold of us, and if the patrons, when we narrow it down to the 3 each equaling 21, we're probably going to have a number of patrons calling us and going, hey, I really like, the grass school, whatever. And then we as board members should take that into consideration because the public's voicing their opinion for a second time. And I think that allows the public to do that, where if we have another committee, a subcommittee that doesn't have the ear of the public, they're going to pick a name that they like, and then they're going to recommend it to us, and then that's removing the public. Where if we get to narrow the names down, and then we get to relook at those names, that's allowing the public to yet again voice an opinion directly to us as board members. So they have even more involvement from my
I
standpoint.
appreciate that, Heather. I appreciate that. I was gonna suggest Marsh Public School, but I mean.
We gotta get to
I personally, and I personally have no problems with the submission that Dr. Fadley's given us. I think it's a democratic process.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair. That's just my opinion. I appreciate it.
I agree with that, and I don't want to nitpick either. And respectfully, I think we might, where our point of disagreement is, I think our approval process is that board involvement. I think, to me, the approval of the name, making that stamp official, is doing our job if the process is played out in a transparent way with community involvement through the process. And I guess that's where, again, I support this. This isn't bad. This is actually really good still. I nitpick.
Yeah, and I like it because of, like I said, it's allowing the public to really kind of dive in, and then when we come together, if we follow this process and we come together to select 3 names each equaling that 21 and making that known to the public, that's gonna give the public at large another opportunity to reach out.
21 is the maximum.
Yeah,
There might be
exactly.
less than 21.
Exactly,
because
there might be,
We're gonna pick the
yeah,
same name.
yeah, so it's.
Dr. Fadley.
So I, my role is just to throw out ideas to see if this might help bridge some of the conversation. So in the process that's currently outlined, we would do the survey. the board would each pick 3, total of 21. Then the board would have conversation at a public board meeting, and they could narrow it down some more, or they could keep the 21 that have been identified. What about a second survey
From the 21.
from the 21, so the board has some additional data before that next board meeting to have that robust discussion? And then I think it weighs in
I appreciate
on the public.
That's
That's
one more
actually a
time.
very good idea.
That's pretty, Dr. Freeman, thank you.
it addresses my concern.
Right.
I don't, I the bias, I can just participate, but it does leave the room for the board to.
Right. And, you know, in my experience, the board is, this board is very willing to listen to what the public, so if the public comes back and let's just say the board narrowed it down to 12 names and the public comes back and 98% of them like this one name, that's going to inform you as a board member as to what you might want to consider supporting.
If I may, can I read that back really quick?
Absolutely.
So what the idea is, following along this, but having a survey out to the public, then the board will have an opportunity to review all of those names, each picking up to 3. Then the board will, and that'll be done in a public discussion equaling up to 21 names. Then a secondary survey will go out, allowing the public to yet again vote amongst those names that we've narrowed down. And then at another meeting, the board will come together to review that secondary survey and come up with a selected name. Did I?
Yes, that's exactly.
Perfect.
Perfect, thank you.
Absolutely.
I was just gonna ask,
Yes,
Dr. Freeman, when can we begin
I
this?
think we could have the survey ready for the October 7th board meeting for the board to look at or, you know, approve.
And then what would you suggest for an end date?
I think we should have this done prior to the end of the year. So December would be our final.
And with final name selection in December?
Yes, so
Okay, good.
you would have the October 7th,
So the survey would close like October 31 or something,
right? Then you would have the November meeting,
right?
November 4th,
Right.
where the board could keep all 21
Mhm.
or narrow it down to 10. And then we would, from the November meeting, we would survey the community, bring it back to the December 2nd meeting. You guys are impressed that I know all these dates in my head. It was December 2nd meeting, and then that would be the time that we would, I think, need to do the name and the color, the mascot and colors.
Now, as it relates to the color, is that something that you're getting public input on also, or is that something that's gonna be more internal?
You gotta wait for the name probably to determine color.
I know they've chosen some stuff.
We've chosen some colors already for the inside, so I mean, we're waiting for the office colors to go.
Right, so we're really talking about the mascot and that kind of stuff.
Sure,
I know there's some.
that's gonna be subsequent to the name of the school, obviously.
So I can circle back with you on that
Yeah, I was just
question. I'll
curious.
ask the architect and because we meet regularly, what if we have a final determination on December 2nd, if that's gonna give them enough time.
And then
Sure.
mascot and color, we could do all 3 on the same thing, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Well, yeah, and then the mascot too, because most of our schools have a mascot that's native to North Dakota, with the exception of the Roadrunners. We don't have Roadrunners in North Dakota. This is true, but we have Mustangs, and I can't think of all the other mascots off the top of my head, the Hawks.
We have grizzlies. I don't know if we have grizzlies in Dakota.
We have black bears
Black bears.
down south.
So to just kind of summarize and bring things back around, let's give definition to what we want to submit to the board for the October board meeting.
Okay.
And that would be, I guess, would be a recommendation to bring this selection process to the board for approval at the next board meeting.
Yep.
Yep. Correct, with the inclusion of the second survey. That the board then would approve the survey process that Dr. Friedley has
And
the electronic or paper.
here's what I have written down as the process with the dates, corresponding dates that I can include with this.
You're amazing. Okay. So the survey process and then the timeline for dates. Does that sound-
And if the board wants to expedite anything, if they want to have a special meeting in between to get, I mean, this is a celebration.
It is, yeah.
Based on feedback from the architects, I think that might be an expedited
Yeah.
process. Are we, as far as naming, I mean, mascots and colors, is that in addition to this process, or how does that be?
I think we should include it in the same survey. So it's all
Yes.
really tight and one thing, we can come up with the survey questions.
Okay.
And then we can disaggregate the data and put it.
Will your team take care of that, the survey, how it's
Yes,
the
well,
wording?
I won't personally because that's above my skill set,
Yeah.
but yes, we do have people that can
Okay.
create those surveys very, very good.
Dr. Faley, this is.
And I'll share it in the board weekly update
Yeah.
before the board meeting so
Perfect.
that we can get, if there is some significant feedback, people can call me or call whoever created it and say, hey, you know, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Because that's important too.
I mean, we had it easy with the high school. Orville Erickson is one who donated the land, so it was the Orville Erickson Williston High School campus, I mean, period, but, and then the ASB, they were the highest donor, so it became the ASB Innovation Academy. And the Bakken, it was an existing building, so it was 100% students that knows that.
I think public school number 7 would be great, but anyway, I'm just kidding.
As I say, we have a couple of school number 7 in the state, so why not?
Any other ideas or suggestions? Well, let's adjourn the meeting at 5:34. Thank you very much for everybody's time and attendance. If you're watching online, thank you very much today for being a part of this. Thank you, Dr. Faley.
You're very welcome.
This was a great starting point.
Yes, I agree. I'll work on typing all of this up and I'll get with Paula about incorporating this into the minutes so that it can be given to work. So I don't have to retype this whole thing.
And we will start working on the survey
Okay.
tomorrow.